I think we're live. Let me check my.
Yep, yeah, it is. It says it right here,
Yeah,
top left.
what it said.
8
I gotta
seconds
check if
live,
it's
bro.
actually streaming to my channel though. Yeah, it is. But so we'll just set up the link. Yeah, if you want, link the video to a whole bunch of places. I don't fucking know.
I mean, I'll do it after because
I'll link this to
Hey, yeah,
Pierce.
once you link it, I'll send it around.
Um, and then I'll put it in Nellie's whatever. It's so funny. I'll put it in alert or whatever.
I mean, you're the YouTube god. I don't know nothing about that.
Yeah, I'll just like do it later, whatever. And I have to like figure out a thumbnail, etc. Anyways, all right. Hello, everybody. I'm Shisui. I'm your host. You guys already know who I am. Today, I am joined with Vince and Akita, two of my homies, and fellow manga heads and manhwa heads and webtoon heads, and so on. But as the title states, we read Biao Ren, which is a Chinese manhwa, and its ongoing series is currently 97 chapters are out, 10 volumes. And we're here to just speak on our thoughts and favorite moments and why potentially you guys should read or not. And so let's jump right into it. The first thing I want to mention is a little bit of the premise, because if you guys are unfamiliar with this story, then let's see. Yeah, so this was a book club read for Vince. He runs two book clubs on Twitter where we read different series, whether they're manhwas, or comics, and they vary from all types of different genres, and just to get people like onto new things and just new experiences with new creators and artists. So it's always fun reading something that's a bit outside of our elements, or something that's right up our alley. It's a bit of a mix with this series. So if you guys don't know, it's the main premise is about basically this character named Daoma, and it takes place during the Sui Dynasty during AD 607, and essentially he is an escort. He's a paid warrior, and he protects several targets, and that's kind of like the whole thing. Initially, it doesn't begin like that. We kind of see him as this very skilled warrior, and with his child, who we're not even going to bother pronouncing the name of. But essentially, he has this relationship with this child. We don't know where the child came from, if it's his. There's so many unanswered questions, and we're along for this journey and this experience as each chapter unfolds, and we meet sort of different characters along the way that are part of his life, and and from that we get backstories and whatnot. So it's a pretty cool series. So without further ado, I'm gonna have Vince lead off and talk about why he chose the series, and so on.
Oh, okay. I'm Vince. If you didn't know, but basically with this series, um, historical is usually a genre that usually goes pretty well, and manga got like Vagabond and Vinland. So time period specific manga usually is just very interesting. It's always interesting to learn about the era. You learn something new, and I just chose this one because I've seen it before. The art was really good, and I've never seen anybody talk about it or anything like that. And it was Chinese based, which also was pretty interesting. That's outside the norm. Normally, a lot of Japanese mangaka seem to go towards different periods of Japan, obviously, or even like European. So it was just interesting to see a Chinese based situation. So that's mostly why. It's like 90% at least.
Bet. Akita, who you guys don't know who Akita is. This man is the manga guru, aficionado. So he had read this series prior to us reading it. So what turned you onto the series, and describe that experience of why you jumped into it.
For me specifically, I really like. I'm a huge on the historical manga, bro. Like, it's always interesting to me because you could see different perspectives on it. Like, you could read like the Romance of Three Kingdoms that tell about Chinese history, but it intrigues so many people. So I really enjoy like reading like whatever I can get my hands on like about that time period, especially because not many people really talk about it. You just see it in books, like history classes. They barely just touch upon it, but they don't really develop much about it. Like they don't pitch it. They don't really pitch a Chinese history to you. So this one specifically, I saw it like on a random website that like how do I explain it? I just saw it like I go dig for raws. And like this one, like the cover like doesn't even look like what the manga's about. They just put Dalma right like flat on the surface, and you're like,
Yeah,
why did this dude look different from the actual story? Like, and so that's what actually it pitched me into it. Like the volume covers look vastly different from the actual story, and I'm like, why do they do that? Like it's just like water painted on there. I'm like, what the fuck? And like when you like get into it, it looks like a typical manga, like from Japan. You'd see it there, but it was actually Chinese, and like there's not many black and white manhua out there. Like so, I had to get like into it because I like there's not many black and white. They always bring in the webtoons, but they never like the black and white printed type manhua don't really reach us in English.
for sure. Yeah, so this is that you hear experience just describing it, really kind of hits the nail on the head, and I think that's what's going to turn a lot of people on to the series, other than like general meatheads who tend to see the art and see the panels that we post. They tend to get like drawn in through that, and yeah, just once you actually get going, because we talked about this off stream, but the story is a little bit slow to sort of take beat, to kind of pick up and get pace, get into stride. And that makes sense, with a story like this that, that involves sort of religion, different ethnic groups, different, arts and culture. And, it's kind of diving into the Western regions of this, this dynasty. And it's pretty impressive. And it's a fun read, and yeah, I did definitely enjoy catching up to the series. And I think the drops are inconsistent, but I think we got like 2 chapters last month, but and it's like it's sporadically, but all over the place. But that's what to expect when you have a series like this. So I'm gonna jump in and talk a little bit about the creator, and sort of what kind of inspired me about him. If I can actually find this. Yeah, here we go. So before, like when I started reading this series and I got to like right around chapter 9, I always do this when I get captivated enough in a story. I'm like, let's kind of figure out the creative process. How did this all come together? Because you're getting a whole bunch of people to read from, different areas of the world. And, at this level of, when you're drawing at this level, it's like, it's always fun to see and kind of dig into the minds of where it all began. So for this guy, his story is really interesting because he lacked any type of drawing skills like whatsoever. And if you've seen the panels, and if you do a quick little search of the series, you guys you probably be taken back at that thought of that. And he just a little bit of his backstory. This is a quote from him. He said, "I became obsessed with the fantasy world that I would read about in comics and see in animated films. And after going through twists and turns in my first 25 years of his life, I thought it was time for me to follow my heart and become a storyteller." So that I'm a romanticist. So that's when I see someone that's very passionate about, taking on a project and starting, this moment has everything built up to this moment, and for them to just kind of take on this endeavor, it's kind of awe-inspiring. And yeah, and to be able to put himself in that place and to be able to think like that, it's a pretty impressive. And yeah, just to add on that, he was a um, advertising major, and he felt that that wasn't really what he wanted to do with his life, and he said, "Fuck it, I want to go and pursue this story that I have, that I've been thinking about for a long time." And he didn't know how to draw, and he started to figure it out. And 9 years later, we have him. He's 34 years old now, and we have one of these amazing stories. So yeah, I thought that is pretty awe inspiring to hear about, that someone who was in a different major, and now he's taking on this project. And for creators, for anybody trying to like create a story, that's one of the best things to. This is a prime example of like anybody can do it. This guy had zero talent in this, and now he's doing this. So it may not be the most successful series across the world, but it's a good fucking start. And yeah, something to take note of. So let's get into favorite moments, favorite characters, all that type of shit, just iconic, whatever. And what do we think about the antagonist? What do we think about the actual narrative, and so on? So I'm gonna kind of pace it so that we run it under an hour, because I don't want to get too longer than that. I don't know, up to you guys, whatever. And yeah, so let's begin. So yeah, the first thing that took notice of me, because I'm going to kind of talk about certain chapters, and then that'll kind of segue into character or moments, and then characters, and so on, stuff like that. So the first chapter, that's what I want to talk about. And you guys can talk about any of the chapter that stood out for you particularly. But the reason why chapter 1 stood out for me, because Vince said, "Hey man, like, he was reading this series, posting panels. I think he made it to like chapter 5, 6, whatever. He's a little bit ahead of me." And he's like, "Man, I think you're really gonna enjoy this." And I'm like, all right. I'm like, well, what makes him say that, right? Because he knows me pretty well. So I said, okay, let me take a quick peek. And so I read the first chapter, and dude comes in, kills 8 dudes like this, and he counts. He has the
It was great.
count to every fucking body dropping on the floor. And I was like, dude, this is like, people, they kind of, for those people that know me or that are watching this or whatnot, it's like automatically assume that I prefer, I don't know, slice of life, whatever genre that you guys think that I'm always, and that's fine. But the thing is, when I'm reading a series like this, that's not the first thing I'm gonna look. I'm gonna look for moments where I'm gonna have my meat out. that's where I want to, that's what I'm looking for. So these sort of iconic and or moments of chaos, moments that I'm like on the edge of my seat, suspense and tension, all that. So yeah, he comes in and he's like, you need to pay me now at 3 times the amount. I'm like, so this man right away, this man's about his business, about his money, he's about his agenda. And he's like, I'm here to collect. And this guy's like, no, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, whatever. He's like, you think you're this type of shit, like whatever. And he's like, you had your chance. Tells the kid to count to 10, bodies drop. And that's what it is. And that was like, that's when I knew. I was like, that's how you draw a fucking first chapter. For anybody
Absolutely.
drawing a action-packed martial arts, any series like that, take notes, because this is the way to do it. Vince, Keita, what were your chapters that like, this was the it moment? Like you were like, I'm reading I'm reading some fucking sauce.
Okay, you go first.
Well, for me specifically, the moment that really intrigued me was the carriage. I forgot what chapter it is, but it's when Dalma basically meets his other companions on the ride.
Yeah.
It's like specifically the carriage was really dope. Like he literally uses his horse to go down he goes down a huge steep cliff and just starts fighting other dudes. Doesn't even tell the dude like, "Hey, I'm gonna help you out." He just starts slashing at motherfuckers, and I'm like, "Yo, this shit's raw. Like, I need to see what's more about this." And like, also to add, like, the religion aspects were dope. Like it comes out later on, like when the religions are brought in and stuff. Like specifically Buddhism, like gets brought in, and like you can sort of see how religion can sort of impact characters on a negative way. So that's really what made me like stick to it. Like later on
For sure.
was how they portray Buddhism like in a good light, but at the same time, like people think they're right when it could be like a extreme. Like they use a religion for an extreme point of view. That's what really like intrigued me. Like the storytelling is really good when you focus on that, but the art really helps like pave the way for it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Vince?
for me as well. For chapter one for me, it was instantly because it was just like one. I love swordsmen. Anybody with a sword, most of the time they're usually pretty rough. They're the main character in the series. Has that focus as a weapon. So that's always good. Two, the art style. I'm not somebody who usually cares about art all that much. I mean, I can tell when I can admit when there's like, oh, this is great art, is not so great art. But at the same time, it's not a big deal for me. But and then like you said, just the way that the character's attitude towards what he was doing and how he just decided he was just gonna take out all these people and he ran around with the kid. Like that's different. Like you don't get to see that too often. So that's just an amazing way to start this series. An instant, you know, way to grab attention, and then now you're like, okay, now I need to know what's gonna happen in this. 'Cause it's just like I don't know where this go.
Yeah. What do you guys think of the main character, Dalma? How do you feel about him?
I like him a lot. Like I think he's not he's a character that in a way that they still need to reveal more about him.
Mhm.
He starts off in a way, at least he starts off within the first 20 chapters, at least in a good enough way where you're just like, oh, he's cool. He does a lot of stuff, and he's gonna he's just not gonna be
He's
somebody that
charismatic.
you're just gonna be like, yeah. He's not, yeah, he's definitely not gonna be someone where you're just like, oh, here we go. I gotta, he's not gonna do anything wrong. I gotta wait for him to get
Yeah,
stronger. It's like, no, the man is already good from
raw
the
first day.
get go. Yeah, it's like he may not, you don't know how if he's gonna be a static character or he's gonna build up, but at least you know what you're getting kind of from the get go. You know he's gonna be good at fighting, and he's kind of almost funny in a way because just like you read his line, he's calling everybody friend because he wants money from them, and I'm just like, I'm just like, wow, he's such a jerk, but it's like a cool jerk in a way, but it's not somebody you want to cross. So I
Yeah.
really like him a lot.
Akira, how do you feel about him?
The MC, right?
Yeah.
I, I can see like personally, I see positive and negative. Like at times, you can see kind of dull as a character, but like when they introduce his background, like later on, like on the like more recent chapters, they introduce more about his background. I can, I get more intrigued. At first, it seemed like kind of he seemed good because he's like charismatic as a dad, but at the same time, he's like really he can seem really negative when it comes to his enemies. So
Mm.
that was a positive for me. But it's like at some time, like at some point, he seemed rather dull compared to the other characters. Like as you see them, like they're more background for them, but they don't really focus on him at one point. So that's how he started becoming. I became less intrigued due to like them showing more background characters and like their history, but not so much like since they didn't really focus on him, even though
Yeah.
he's like the main protagonist. But
Right.
like in the more later chapters, how they did like I like them more as an MC. Like as the main protagonist, I really like him now than I did later, like before.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. I think he has a certain charm to him, and we're experiencing the journey at a certain point in his life that um, we haven't witnessed the beginning, and we get that at sort of crucial moments, the moments that we do need it. And I think that this mangaka, he's very intuitive. He's very Nelly. What's up to everybody in the chat, by the way? Thanks for coming through. I didn't really stream like put this video out there, have a thumbnail or anything on the fly ready to go. So I think I dropped it in 2 chats, and whoever like joins. So be it. I didn't even put it in my Discord. But yeah, so I guess everyone who's joining in after, I guess we'll see this when this video is already uploaded. But yeah, so anyways, yeah, Dalma, I think the story does a really good job of the main character. He's this he's very charming, and he has this charisma to him that is very appealing. And since we're witnessing a certain part of his life that isn't we haven't seen what made him, what created, how he came to be. And I think that's kind of like a different approach from the series that I've been currently reading, where it's always about building the character arc, the story circle, the journey between, someone starting off and where at a certain point in life. We're already thrust into his daily life, his daily routine. And I think that's like a little bit of a more realistic approach to it. And that's one of the things that makes the story kind of feel more authentic in a way. And another thing is in an unconventional sense. And another thing is being the art. The art is also something else that makes it feel like, this is an ancient story and I'm being told this, like some retelling of something that has like years of history. It feels that way. And it kind of does. I know it's like based on true events, but the fact that like it just feels like, I don't know, it just feels like a story that kind of draws you into it and makes you think about, just the different, like we said, religions and culture and so on. But just to get back on track regarding the MC, it's like, I think one of the things that I think this story does really well is the flashbacks, and especially pertaining to him. They come at moments where I don't feel that there's, it's this sort of unnatural, or where it's like, okay, we're reading this story and then somebody dies, or, somebody's having a characters talking, and not to say like those are, typical, there are ways we see a lot of creators and artists do that. That's perfectly fine. You can do that in any series if you choose to. It's just he chose to sort of have it where when he's interacting with another character and he's sort of or he's thinking about certain, he's having these small glimpses into things that remind him who he once was. That's when the flashbacks come. And I think that's a way more like, becomes way more integral to the story. It feels way more important, and it kind of sucks you in because we don't know who he is. So we're constantly, and all of a sudden, when he's in this cave getting a new sword, and, all of a sudden we have this flashback about he's remembering like what he did and like who he once was. And then he's like, he snaps right back into it, and he's like, no, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's like, I'm not going to get drawn in. And then he says these lines where he's like, I'm not here for, to become this person you want me to be, this, you know what I mean? Like, this person's going to change destiny or whatever, and that's part of the whole hero's journey, right? The refusal to the call, the refusal to step up to the plate. That often happens in stories, but never this late. And so we're 97 chapters in, and he's, the man's just, he's along for the ride. He's not really, he does things out of obligation, and he has such like, his morals kind of operate on like, I owe this person, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure that I pay this debt. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of like his justice. That's his way of seeing things. And one of the characters, the mentor-y character, or whatever you want to say, I guess, but not to him, to Ayuya, old man Mo, who's this person who he owes a lot to, he feels indebted to, and obviously a lot of gratitude. And the relationship is, I mean, he's his slave. That's the weird thing, is that he is this old man's slave, but it doesn't feel like that. And even when they mention it, you're just kind of, you overlook it. You don't really take notice of it because it doesn't feel that way. I mean, the old man Mo said himself, he said, the debt has already been paid. You played it twice full. Like, you and I are good. And I just like the fact that, like, he sticks to that. And then at the same time, he also breaks his own rules. And that adds to the comedic part of the story, where, he doesn't take people's food. He doesn't take people's clothes, but he's like, you got a good sword, I'm going to fucking take it. And I always like that aspect. Or, when he needs it the most, he's like, let me take this medallion, this little symbol that represents my, I'll borrow it.
Yeah, he'll borrow it. Yeah, he's very reluctant as a protagonist. You could even call, if you want to call him a hero, he doesn't
Yeah.
act like a hero, but if you want to call him the hero of the story, the very reluctant hero. He's not someone who, necessarily wants to be involved in the things that he's involved in, but he feels like, one, I'm only good for this particular thing. I only know how to swing a sword. I'm not a carpenter. I'm not somebody who can wash clothes. I know how to swing a sword. That's what I'm best at. So that's what I'm gonna do. That's my job. And also the flashbacks, like what you said, it almost feels, no, not even almost. It feels very TV-ish. When you watch TV shows and how they incorporate flashbacks, and I like that because yeah, it doesn't feel like they're using it for sympathy or just like. And he always seems to bring it in right kind of when you need it to bring some more interest to the story. It's just like because you think about it, he brings it in, you're just like, oh, I kind of want to go see what happened then, but then he goes back to what happened in current time to help tie it in to kind of how it used to be and how it is now. So I do like that aspect about the story. Not every flashback was as good as Dalma's flashbacks because his seemed to be definitely consistently the best, but the flashbacks do help bring a lot of intrigue to this story.
For sure. Kita, you want to speak on any more thoughts?
Yeah, like the mangaka specifically, it like once you start picking up on the story, you can see like he pretty much has it mapped out, like you said. Like it seems like he sort of like planned this beforehand, like because it all seems like really linear for me. Like specifically how later on, like once you really get into the story, you see that it's sort of traversed in three different ways, like throughout the journey. Like there, you get almost like I think 3 to 4 different perspectives, like later on, which is really cool because it's like it follows Dalma, but it's like and his companions, like even though they like separate, some come and go, but you still get that person who separated from Dalma. Later on, you see their perspective, like on their point of view in that part of history, which was
Yeah.
really intriguing for me, which is like one of my favorite parts. Like you see later on, it's like different points of view, but they're all one huge story.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's really good at the shifting of focuses. I think, well, I wouldn't say really good, but I think he's getting into stride. He's definitely gotten better over the course he's written this story. I don't know how long it's been going on, but maybe I don't know 6 7 years, whatever. But for the course of how long he's written this story, he seems to be improving here and there with each part, and yeah, like you said, it does have a linear pace, sort of a linear stride to it. But I think I also appreciate it for, like I said, I was mentioning earlier, just like if you think about it in a conventional sense of, um, well, I'm not sure I should mention. Well, yeah, I'll segue into this a little bit. Where in a conventional sense, when you look at shonen stories, where it's kind of very, you know, A to B, and where it's like it doesn't really matter what shonen stories, most of them kind of do. The protagonist experiences this similar things as far as like what the placement of when it happens throughout the story. And like, you know, for example, when he's like, um his call to like, he lives in this ordinary place, he's doing whatever, right? His life is either shit or it's normal or it's above average, and then he gets thrust into something, some event happens, and he sort of has to deal with that, and then that call to sort of like the action, that call to for him to do something, and because of his morals, because of his beliefs, he suddenly sort of gets roped into this new world, and that sets him off on his journey, right? um and I mean, I just me describing that right now, or meeting the mentor, going into different, uh facing different obstacles, is, at different points in the series, it's like me describing that already feels like many of the stories on Shonen Jump. I mean, Bleach is at the top of my head, right? But within this story, it's kind of like where it takes place is rather different. I mean, yeah, there's still obstacles he faces. There's still, ordeals he has to take on, but and you know, and journeys he has experienced, but it's not in a conventional sense. It's, you know, yes, it's linear, you know, yes, it's very like, it feels that things are kind of happening, and yes, he's planned out how it's going to kind of unfold. You know, it feels very natural in that sense, but at the same time, there's still things that happen in the story that you're like, you know, I wouldn't expect it to happen here. You know, we're not even, you know, all of a sudden we're getting Yuya, and she's kind of having her journey, right? And that kind of deviates from the normal path, but we're still kind of circling back. It turns out, you know, by her going off, we're meeting these other tribes, we're meeting these other people, right? And that's kind of like, I think him building up the core group that he's traveling with is a pretty smart way. And you know, and each of them they feel significant, you know, they each get their kind of their moments, and times to shine without overshadowing the main character. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. Let's talk about some of the characters, since we, you know, I brought a little bit of that up. Yeah, let's talk about Ayuya. Yeah, she's a great place to start. Kita, one of you guys can go.
I'll go first.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Ayuya is honestly one of my favorite characters. Like, you meet her early on in the story, and the way her character develops is really, I want to say, well scripted. You can say, like, you can see the mangaki's emotion for her and her story. Like, some can say it's like a typical, like, I don't know if it'll like spoiler, but it's like not huge because it's like introduced really early on. Like, her story is sort of like a, like, she's really focused on that. You can think like she can have like her own spin-off in a way, like, because it's like a revenge story basically, but at the same time not too much of a revenge story if you think about it, because it's like they're not focusing on that aspect itself, they're focusing on her, on like how she's going to go about her own story and her own journey, which is why she's honestly one of my favorites, because it's like she has her own journey and it feels like her own story when it's focused on her, which is really, you can say the word special to it. Like, it's her own special story when it's about her, which I really appreciate a lot.
For Ayuya, it's from her introduction, because she also has a very different introduction. She appears and she kills a guy right when she shows up. So it's just like, you know, you don't see that too often, especially from, you know, women characters and these type of time periods and these type of historical things. So just from the moment she shows up, she's already different. She seems to like also just have a whole bunch of different emotions. She could be sad, she could be very angry, she could be happy. She just jumps around, and the way that she's introduced and the way you think she's gonna use, you know, the author really diverges from that, and he goes a different route that, and you know, that very few people ever expect for it to go. So it's just the way he used her is very interesting, and the way he used her to show a different part of the journey and different clans and things like that is really good. I really like that aspect a lot.
Yeah. I think I spoke on this a little bit on Twitter for you guys that, you know, the chat that follow me, but for those that don't, yeah, Ayuya to me, is, I mean, she's experienced so much, um, and I think that like I do take note of her as a character. She doesn't feel, there's nothing detrimental to her that I feel that I'm like, okay, there's a major issue going on with her, that I'm like, I dislike or anything like that. Yeah, she's, you know, very strong-willed, and again, she also is charismatic, and I think that's why like her and Dalma kind of fit well together too. And she also has an intriguing backstory, where we're not sure that the child, that's her, she's the mother, or what kind of relationship that they had. I mean, we kind of seen some panels where she was like with the king like that night, and so was Dalma, and then all of a sudden like they escaped, and it was just a weird transpiring event. We're not sure exactly, can't pinpoint, you know, what's really going on. I'm sure we're not going to get that until we get closer and closer to Shangon. But yeah, like what I said originally was that in retrospect, her character arc is okay to me. She's a fighter and a damn good one, and her setup isn't too bad, but I was more focused on characters revolving around her, and I think she does have
Yeah,
potential.
it also feels very fast too.
Mhm.
You know.
I think she does have potential, especially I think where she's at now, like who she's trying to be, where she's, she mentions to Dalma, I'm no longer that girl, right? She's taking the first step and to finally fill the shoes, becoming the character that I want her to be. But I think her story is by no means bad or anything like that. I just feel, I don't feel too attached to it. I'm fine the way it is. It's not something that you know, I'm, you know, on the edge of my seat for, or, feel so many emotions for. But it is something that I'm like, I appreciate for what it is. I appreciate for him for putting in the story. And I think that I'm more excited to see where she goes from here than where she is currently right. Or, her past stuff like that. But that also kind of segues into a character that I do like, that I do really enjoy, which is um some people in the chat are kind of like behind a little bit, but yeah, a character that I do really enjoy, which is Old Man Mo, who is a character that is in significantly less chapters. The chapter count is less than Ayuya's, and I mean he's gone by chapter 14. But I know that's a major spoiler for those who are not reading, but it's not a death that I feel kind of takes away from the overall picture. I promise I won't mention any big spoiler, but after this one, but yeah, I think that something I do need to bring up, because I did feel at odds in the way that like it kind of happened. You guys already know this, but from just from the I'm speaking from just something personally, something I would choose, because I'm a very reasonable reason and logic. A lot of my characters, and if you are an emotional character, like Simone, I it kind of has to. There's kind of has to be strong emotions with that. Shigeo from Mob Psycho, he's another character that has really driven by really strong emotions. But I don't know. I feel like Old Man Mo is a kind of like very intuitive, very wise character, and someone that that's what the impression I got from him. Someone who makes decisions rationally. And if you look at his life and what he's accomplished, creating this um, caravan, creating this group of people, bringing all these people together, and sort of, uh, you know, keeping the tradition alive, keeping the tradition going. That's kind of like I've always had this kind of admiration and respect, and I'm not the only one, because a character uh, in the series who has a major character shift and turn. You guys, if you guys know, I'm talking about the minister's lieutenant or whatever. He goes through like a major shift in the story, but yeah, even he has this admiration and respect. He's like, man, this guy has integrity, and that's something I can't go against, no matter how I was raised to be. Like how you're raising me to be this shifty, maniacal person. It's like, no, he's like, I gotta respect what this guy's done, and a lot of people do. Even the person who ends up killing him. So, yeah, I think Old Man Mo to me is one of the characters that just stands out. He's just a fucking he's just a fucking amazing character. But the thing that I think I'm more at odds with the way he went out. I'm just kind of like, fuck. Like when you have someone like that part of the story that you love and then he's gone, it's just like, bummer. But for the chapters that he was in, he was dope.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can speak on him.
Yep. It's just very. It's just you know, like, we already talking about it, so we might as well go all the way. I try to talk around, not spoiling, but since we're already here,
Yeah.
like just with him, the decision he tried to make, I think it's always different when you're dealing with other people's lives in your hand, and he's always been kind of a person that he tries to be like very fair and try to be like well, if you want to do something, I don't want to stop you either. That seems to be a way he goes about things. He's never been a type of person to be like, well, do this. He doesn't enforce his rule. And because he doesn't do that, he gets a lot of loyalty.
Yeah.
Because he's not tyrant with an iron fist. And because of how he was, I think it led to a situation where it becomes a choice where it's just like he could have used the people that he had in a better way than he did. But he was trying to be a person that he didn't want them to unnecessarily risk their lives.
Yeah.
He wanted the choice to be in their hands, which you can argue he could have used his power at that moment to make them do something different from what they actually went about doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely understand it, but I also understand the other way, maybe what the author was trying to intend to do with,
of course,
you know, just letting them have free choice. And also, I think maybe he was trying to add impact to the death too, and he probably could have got away with it either way, but maybe it just hits more for Ayuya and Dao Ma, since they had more, connection to that particular character in a big way. That not only did they lose him, they lost even more people. So,
yeah, Kita, did you speak on Old Man Mo? How do you feel about? How do you feel about him? You with us, Akita? Or am I lagging? Or
All right, so sounds pretty good for me. Right? Old Man Mo is more like a good character.
I think
I don't want on Jim, but it's like really.
hold on,
I don't want
Akita.
he has a story on the.
Give me just 1 second. I think we're having a little technical difficulties. 1 second.
Yeah.
That was really odd. I don't know. Let me bring back a second here. Sorry, I apologize for everyone who's watching. Yeah, go ahead. Or I guess
that's better.
I think he's refreshing. Yeah, I told the stream Vince that he was having technical difficulties because he was lagging. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I was too a little bit because like I had my AirPods in and then they weren't working, so I had to take them out and refresh it. But we're good now.
All right. Oh, back. Wait for him to connect in. Hey, welcome back. So what you were saying?
What were you on before?
Old Man Mo.
Oh, still okay. Cool.
I don't think he's registering with Nikita. Let me watch the stream so I can see who's like lagging and who isn't.
Gotcha. He's frozen in time and space.
Okay, so it's a 5-second count. I'm behind, and the stream is 5 seconds behind. Okay, Akita. Yeah, Akita, you are frozen, my friend. Type it in the private chat.
He's super frozen.
Oh, you're back. Kinda. I guess we could just circle back, but
No problem.
let's talk about who's a character. Oh shoot, the white-haired swordsman that is just came out of nowhere. I mean, the dude is raw. And I like his fighting style. Actually, his fighting style is probably my favorite one out of anyone in the series, because when he fights, he does this twisting motion with his body, and it kind of like his clothing, the garments that he's wearing, flows with it, and it makes for these fucking amazing panels. And so, he's probably one of the best fighters in the series, and he looks like his story. What we know about him so far is that he's indebted again. Well, first off, that his name is actually fairly fucking prominent, even though he wasn't really part of the main family. his sort of father or mentor, he owned this like kind of section in this like what's the word for it? Trading, whatever trade place where they're trading
Yeah.
goods and whatnot. And yeah, so his father was pretty well known, but he wasn't a very strong man. He wasn't very both in character and strength, and so that's where Shu came in. He kind of gave him this chance, this opportunity. So yeah, so then eventually, things happened, and he gets roped into this world where uh, I mean, the dude was eating hearts at one point. So yeah,
Yeah,
he
that
was
that was something I was just like, what? Whoa, yeah, that was different.
man was he killed everybody in there. And it's just everybody who plotted against his father. So yeah, so he's trying to make his way back to kill someone. In order to do that, to make it in the city, he has to become somebody, and he owes this person this debt. And the one task he has to do is basically capture this girl. Um, and she goes by the name Young or Yan Xin Yang. And she we don't really know anything about her, but other than the fact that she kind of she's carrying a lot with her, and she also feels that traveling along this journey, she feels kind of a part of this group. So yeah, so that's the girl. The first time we see both of them is in this carriage, and they kind of get roped into Dalma and his whole thing, and from his decision from the first time we met him to the current point where we are and where we left off in the latest chapter, we see this kind of slow progression, and it's not something you can notice like off jump, but um it's kind of slow beats, and it feels very natural. It doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like he fights with Dalma, and all of a sudden they're best buddies. I mean, when they're fighting together, they're actually physically stepping on each other to get the last kill. That's how competitive. That's how you know. That's
They
how.
almost feel like Samurai Champloo, even in the
Yeah,
way they fight a little bit.
yeah,
Because Dalma fights very unorthodox, he uses a lot of weapons, and you're like, why does he have so many weapons? And then Shu is just like, my sword and my swordmanship is pretty, but it's still relentless and still
yeah,
very brutal. It's just nicer. It's just it's a nicer way of swinging your sword. But at the end of the day, he's still just as brutal, if not more,
yeah.
in some ways.
Yeah, and yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I mean, I don't know who I would put as Mugen and Jin in that scenario, but they kind of both feel like Mugen, to be honest. But
True. Yeah.
they're fucking animals, and they're just ferocious. And Shu is just he I don't know, like I said, his fighting style is like the most prominent thing. I know that's like it feels like not much to say about a character like him. You would think that out of all the characters I mentioned and their backstories and how they operate and where they come from and all that, but that's not the thing that strikes me about him. It's literally his fighting style. I've never seen anything. Well, I have, but it's very few times have I seen something like this. And yeah, he's dope. And I'm pretty excited to see where he's headed for that. Do you have any more thoughts, regarding Shu?
He might be my favorite character, to be honest. I
Woo!
didn't write a character list when we
Neither
were
did I.
talking about it off screen, but he might be my favorite because, like you said, the organic way that they're building him up, and even though he's not the most dynamic and he doesn't say too much, it's just kind of a joy to watch him. He's also just very strong when he does decide to take action. When he decides he wants to help out, he has no problems, no qualms about that. He comes, he helps out, he does what he needs to do, and he does, even though he doesn't speak on it, he does seem to have some sense of honor and integrity and respect. He just doesn't, he's not one to vocalize it, but he seems to go by some measure or some things.
Yeah.
He's been with the group for a while. He instantly did not have to, stick with them and stick that out, especially since he was kind of forced into the ordeal in the first place.
Right.
But he decides to stay with it anyway once he's been roped in. Now, to his credit, he does gain some benefit from staying with them, but at the same time, he still contributes. He doesn't have to do that, especially the particular part where Dao Ma is fighting the group of people, and he decides to step in. He didn't have to do that, but he decided to. And also, when he defends our employer from Dao Ma when Dao Ma's kind of going off the end. He said, "Let him finish."
Yeah.
He didn't have to step into that either. But so, I like his character a lot, and I'm on mute because of, unfortunately, this dog.
Yeah. That's fine. But yeah, I think yeah, I think he's definitely feels integral to the story as far as just like he's not just some fighter, you know, when they need it. They're like, oh, okay, we need somebody who's just as capable as Dao Mao, so it feels realistic for them surviving these fucking obstacles. No, it actually feels that like, you know, he's going to the same city and they kept it simple. They're like, he's like, I got this thing to do, you got this thing to do. Let's keep it a buck. Like it's better if we come together and we just fight, you know, and they're martial artists. This is you know, they're fighters, you know, this is what they're going to do. And because of who they are, both who they are as a people, they kind of fit pretty well. And so does the rest of the group members. Obviously the child has to be with Dao Ma, you know, he goes everywhere he goes, but just Ayuya feels out of place a bit, you know, even when she was kind of with them for a little bit, but it's like she kind of feels, you know, she's kind of like, what's the word for it? How do I say this? I don't know. She feels like, I'll just stick with, yeah, she feels out of place in a way. And
Yeah, she has a different air. Like, they're kind of people that, even though she doesn't have like the greatest backstory either, but she comes from not a prominent household, but pretty well off. She comes from a place where, at least from what we've seen of her so far, she has a different air, a different grace about her. She had different things to worry about. She definitely had a better upbringing. These two, like, they've had some blood and grit and bones, and they have just like, they are not the nicest, most compassionate people. They are definitely living in the gray. They're not evil either, but they're not people that don't mind taking advantage of others or stealing if it calls for it, or running over. Like, but they like I said, they still have some code and some honor about them, but they're also very flexible, and she's not like that. She's very big on her culture and upholding certain morals and ethical codes and things that she feel are important. And her tribe and her homeland were something that were so important and integral to her character that they don't have, because they're very nomadic, very vagabondish with how they live. So.
Trying to slide it in there.
Slide it in there.
Don't make me get my books. But yeah, I feel, yeah, I feel that she was definitely raised differently, and Old Man Mo did a pretty good job of doing that and kind of raising her on instilling these values into her. And one of my favorite moments, now that you brought it up, is actually when they're traveling through the desert and Old Man Mo is walking barefoot, and, you know, he has his feet's all fucked up, and, you know, it is what it is, but they're kind of traveling to this place to reach their destination. And she's like, you know, why don't you just get on the fucking horse? Why don't you just, like, I don't understand. Like, I have shoes, I can walk. And he's just like, oh, like, that isn't the way. That isn't you know, that isn't tradition. And, you know, he's kind of stuck up in that way. And that's kind of also the thing that simultaneously caused his death. But, you know, he's kind of stuck in his ways like that. And she's just kind of like, you know, he means so much. This is my father. You know, it means so much to me. And yeah, I think, I don't know. The thing that strikes me about her is just even when we see the panels where she's not talking, when He Yang first noticed her, you know, with the bandana and when he first noticed her, he was like, she's like on top of this horse and he's like taken away, and you know, it's not just him, we're also taken away. Like, we're the same thing.
Almost feels larger with life, how she's presented, how she's drawn, and definitely to the other character, she definitely seems to have a role where she's very, I don't want to make this comparison too strong, but it almost reminds me of Games of Thrones, you know, with Daenerys, almost. Not quite, obviously, but how they built her kind of at the beginning, where it's just like she's presented and they build her out with just like, oh, she's just larger than life. She's gonna have a very important role in the story.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost similar to that. Obviously, not the same, because it goes about a completely different way. It's a different way to present it. Yeah,
because both Daenerys and Ayuya both have this presence that kind of like, not like really majestic, but they kind of demand power with it. Like, their dominance is really kind of showcase. And that's another thing he's great at is perspective. When every time a character like feels something or is like thinking about something or in the midst of battle, it's like, you know, there's panels of where there are kind of these extra close-ups or these kind of certain shots where they're in the distance, like, you know, showing the landscape. I don't know. He's just very good at perspective. Another really amazing scene is when they enter the city of Chang'an and they go through these two sort of gates, and the second gate they get into a fight, and this dude is just fucking nuts. He's just like the gatekeeper. He just kind of like jumps up from the fucking top,
he
and like grabs a flagpole, like one of those just, you know, celebratory flags, and just fucking kills the horse, and then starts duking it out with Bo Shu and Dao Ma. And they're like, dude, we need to get the fuck out of here. And this dude's just like, this is the first time they meet someone where
it's like you already got this guy to deal with, and then it's like if anybody else's comes, it's not gonna
like we're good. And the one of my favorite panels. I wish I set up this better so I can show my. I guess I'll figure out how to use StreamYards in the future. But one of my favorite panels where when he does that, you can see how like the angles from above, and he's sort of like he's coming down on the two characters, and they're kind of looking up like who the fuck is this that just jumped 40 feet, like, you know. It's just, that's what I mean by perspective. You know, shit like that slaps. Shit like that has me on the edge of my seat, and it's something that
his fight scenes still do a really good job, even though it's not like you don't see every clash by clash thing. You still see the majority of it, and what he does draw is just so impactful. When somebody dies, you feel that. When they swing in, they feel that. It's not just, you know, and it's not just clashing for the sake of clashing, and it's not just swinging for every move. Every intent is to kill somebody. Yeah, and you can feel that every time you see it.
To bring it to life, and some of these characters have some of the best panels with that regarding that. But just to read some of the comments here. Biao Ren better than Vinland? No. The current overall the content. No. The story in Vinland is just way more impressive. You guys know how I feel about Askeladd. He's in my top 16 character 4x4. And there is a video coming out sometime down the road on him. I already did the thread for it, but I'll probably flash out a video on that. But yeah, no guys. Vinland,
it's a solid start, but we don't know how long it plans to go. But no, it still definitely has a way to go. Like, it's picking up, but some of the negatives, since we're already here, I guess we can talk about it a little bit. Kind of starts off a little bit confusing and almost without direction when it first starts, because you don't quite know where it's gonna go, and then you might have some opinion very subjective about how certain parts go, and the pacing of how a Yu Yu story at the very beginning goes, and some of that. But it's just starting to pick up. We don't even know the stride or how long it's gonna go, but definitely not. A lot of those stories, other historic ascendings had the more popular ones had stronger starts and stronger where they're at now. So it's just like from what we know of them. So no, it's not on that level. I think it has good and still has a lot of potential, but no, it's not on that level.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
They could definitely get there though.
Yeah, first off, we're at different places in the story. Vinland we're wrapping up the conclusion. This is the last arc of Vinland, pretty much. You know, they're going to Vinland. They're going to Newfoundland, which is the historical actual representation. But yeah, they're going to the New World, and Thorfinn is making decisions, with company and with his friends and people going on their journey about kind of deciding like this is we need to finish what we need to do here and figure out like how we're going to get there and are we going to take weapons? That's where we're at in Vinland, and that's kind of that's setting up for the last arc. We don't know how long that last arc is going to be, but it's a much tighter story. This is like it feels like it's going to be a little longer. Vinland feels like it's going for like maybe a little over 200, but this feels like it feels longer. But it depends. I mean, maybe they could just they're already at Chang'an. They're things could wrap up rather quickly. We already got pretty much a lot of the things are fleshed out in the story. Oh, I just realized my thing's not connected. 1 second. Yeah. And yeah, it's just we're at different places, but well, let me see my other stuff. Air Gear, Immobile 3. Okay. Shout out Chrono. Yeah, and Nick with the whole, immobile mobile shit. Listen, y'all already know how I feel about points, whatever. 0.5 point. Yeah.
0.5 system
Yeah.
for the win. Let's
We
go.
don't do that here. Uh, still gonna
You
catch
got
up.
too many sevens. You got too many sevens though, because you want at the 0.5.
Yeah, no, you can catch up you want. I mean, I have it as a 7. It just, yeah, it feels, I wouldn't say a smooth 7. I wouldn't, I wouldn't say like,
He has it at a 7. I have it at 7.5.
yeah,
If you see me more around these podcasts, my ratings are usually like a point higher, and I go by a 0.5 because that kind of helps me. I can't pronounce the word. It helps me broaden how I feel about certain series. Now I'm not gonna start doing like 0.1s and 0.2. That's just entirely too much. But I do
9.2.
0.5 and I like the
Good.
point. Yeah, no, that's entirely too much. But no, normally I think I'm a little bit more easier going on the story because I'm a lot easier to entertain.
Yeah.
And he's more critical, especially on some of the writing aspects, which I can be, but at certain times I also can let go of certain flaws depending on how invested I am into the story and or characters. But
Yeah,
normally we're not too far away from each other either. We're not usually big discrepancy in ratings. But yeah, so he got it at 7. I got it at 7.5. So it's like recommendable. Like you can be like, oh, you can read this. It probably wouldn't be the first thing, but it's just like nice art. Got enough chapters for you to get into. It's 97, so that's a good place. Not far too long, but not early in the story either. And you could just see how it goes and if it appeals to you. If you get to chapter 50 and it doesn't hit, it could be completely understandable. But I'd say probably get around like 40-ish before you drop it, before you make a decision.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much, that kind of directly answers your, or directly relates to kind of what Nelly where he's at in the story, and kind of like, or anybody else trying to pick up the story, like whether or not should I read this or not. How I feel like 8, if the story isn't an 8, I don't recommend it, but there are stories that are 7s that I think that, you want to read something out of your experience. You just want to have fun. You want to enjoy it. You want to see some cool fucking martial arts fights and some characters that are that hit, and this is it, and it's a lot. It's outside of it, and because it's Chinese tradition, there's really only several stories. Well, actually, on the major end, Kingdom is it. That's the only. That's really the only.
Yeah, that's the only one that comes to mind.
Historical.
That's not Chinese based itself. The
Yeah.
mangaka and all that's not Chinese based, because a lot of I don't want to get too far into that, but a lot of Chinese that has a lot to do with martial arts and cultivation, but it's a totally different side. I don't know too much about it. I just know the ones I've read. But yeah, this is different. It's a different perspective. It's a lot different from anything. Still on the historical side. And it's just different from just about anything else we have other than like Kingdom, but that's a different time period.
Yeah.
It's not a time period that I know that is spoken about a lot. I've actually never heard anybody talk about it. I've probably seen it on the History Channel once or twice, or my own personal time that I like looking up random historical things, but I've never seen this in a manga like you do with medieval times or certain other areas. So, it's just different for that, and that it's really cool to look at.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much the only thing that this really story kind of, the dynasty where, Su Dynasty and everything that it's or Sao, that however you pronounce it. I'm sorry. If I ever do a actual video on this, I'll clean up the pronunciations. But yeah, the only real thing is the geographical terrain and the fact that there was 3 kings that ruled this land. And in the story, we see the 3 people that they do talk about, the rulers and the changes it goes through. And we are on historically, the last king brought doom. He brought demise to the entire dynasty, and it was replaced. Yeah, it was succeeded by the Tang dynasty. So that's pretty much the only real historical. And the weapons. I was looking in some of the I don't know, extras. Yeah, some of the little extra details that he throws in at some of the end of these chapters, and yeah, the actual weapons. He does a lot of research on the swords, and that's something he's very passionate about. And that is pretty historically accurate about how when these blades clash like that, they don't last. They don't last forever.
That was a really that. Now that you said that, I didn't really when I'm talking about the big picture ideas, but a small detail, yeah, it's really nice. Most of the time, when you see a lot of manga or anime, you see people just repeatedly hitting their swords together. You can't actually do that in real life, not like that. Especially with the speed, skill, and precision in which you're doing it. And that's why I touch on a lot of the movements is to kill. Because if you lose a sword, like that's just kind of it for you. Like,
right,
nobody's gonna care if you don't have a sword in your hand anymore. Like that's it for you. And that's one reason why Dalma carries so many, because he's just like he's just a very prepared man. So he just like anything could happen in a fight. You gotta be able to use anything. You don't know what situation you're gonna be in.
So. Yeah, the man knows how to fight. Man carries a bag since the moment even in the flashbacks, man's carrying a bag. Like just a bag of who else in a fucking series carried a bag of 20 fucking swords. Ready to not even just swords, axes.
Ever,
At one point, this dude had an axe. I'm like, bro, like this man, like he can't. He's coming ready to fight at all. He comes ready to collect his money. He comes ready to fight. He said, "Someone better bring me my money." That's his time. That's how he operates. To answer some of these other questions, on a rating, let me see. No, I would not put my cosign on the line for this series, but
neither one of us would do that.
But if you like this video,
it's nice, but no.
And you like what you've been hearing so far, then read it. If not, or if you've seen some of the panels we post on the timeline, sure, I'm sure it's gonna take you like. I know how some of you guys operate. It takes 16 people just to fucking put you on. I get it, right? We're manga heads. We do this. This isn't us. We don't need an obligation. Anybody could tell us.
We're looking for something different. We've read a lot of the high profile series. We've read a lot of things that we were just like, okay, here's something in the historical martial art chain of things that's not talked about, that's not, but has a good art style and has a good enough introduction into the series where you feel like, okay, I can continue this. And it's a good enough story that makes you, if you're into it, it's a good enough story that makes you want to continue to keep up with it. Because if you're like, oh, if it updates, you're like, oh, sure, I'll go check that out. You're not going to be like fiending for it. You're not going to be like looking for laws and Googling and none of that. But if you see it update, you're like, oh, sure, I'll go do that. I'll go read it and go check it out. That's how I think both of us are on the same page with that, or how we perceive that series with that. So it's just like, yeah, if you're looking for something different, you like historical, you like martial arts, you like some good art, you like Chinese history, you just go look at it. Just go at least give it a chance. If you don't like it, that's fair enough.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the chapters now. They're relatively they're around 20-ish pages.
Yeah, they're not even too crazy.
So you're not gonna get a full bite size because this series comes out like. Let me check the So they dropped 2 chapters on the 17th, and then 2 months prior to that, it dropped on February 19th, and then it seems to update every 2 months. I think it's bi-monthly.
Yeah, bi-monthly.
But yeah, it's nice. I mean, it makes sense that it's hold on, let me see if I can bear with me for a second here. Turn the brightness.
So while he's doing that, but this is like the level of artwork and some of the things you can see certain aspects that he puts into the story. Maybe he has put into his research where you can see why it takes more than a month to do so, because maybe he wants to be more historically accurate, or even though all manga has a lot of loosened perspectives and loosened ability of how they write it, but they may want to get certain parts right. And it's really, really good art. It's definitely up there.
So for anybody, this is the type of art you're gonna get.
Very detailed, very good. Definitely high tier, definitely high.
It makes sense that you're gonna see is going to take as long as it takes because, that's what you're getting, right? And that's a random chapter, so I haven't even shown you the pinnacle, so yeah, it's nice. Want to see if go back to my notes here. I'm not really going to talk. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just say if you want to know. We're at hour 10.
Yeah. But I think we talked in the beginning of the video. We didn't like just random shit, so I'll trim that part or whatever. But
Okay.
yeah, I think. But yeah, we have hit that hour mark for sure. Yeah, I'm just looking through just to see some things that some things that I really.
If you wanted to touch on the other guy that you talked about, I forgot his name, with the character shift, because these names are so.
Oh, yeah, his name is yeah, so the minister's name is Pei Shiju, but that's not how you pronounce it. I'm not even gonna bother to, but yeah, so he's the prime minister, and then the second son is Peion Xinshao or something like that. But yeah, he's the dude that offers. Well, we first meet him when him and the minister are calling the family heads to sort of make a decision whether or not they either choose to, ally with this kingdom or you die, and they kind of pin them against each other to kind of, and yeah, the other families against each other because they operate off that. But yeah, when we first see him, and yeah, he has a major character arc, and he's probably the last character we're going to talk about today. But it's not a character you would expect would turn out like this. I'm not gonna really spoil it too much, but I'm just gonna say that he took me by surprise, and I'm very excited to see where he's going. And actually, I said I was only going to talk about him, but I am gonna just kind of segue a little bit to talk about the dude with two fucking I forgot those types of weapons, what the weapon specifically called. We have to go back and take a second look at it. I know the professor's unprepared. Sorry, boys, but yeah, he has these two fucking weapons, like baton type things, and almost like kind of Daredevil, but not really, and like kind of like metal prongs in a way. But yeah, that's his kind of fighting style. And right now, those two characters are meeting, but he's like this. The character that I'm talking about is this young kind of. He knows how to fight, but he's very honorable, and he's very naive at the same time. But this dude knows how to fight, and he had a really good story as well. But they tie together because those two characters finally met. So I'm interested to see. The point was, I'm interested to see where they go off of, and where they're going to go from there. Because eventually, all of these characters are going to come together. And
it's also interesting because he was a character that I didn't. They kind of give you a false. You said this too off screen. We were talking about. They give you almost like a false impression of him when you first see him. It's like he does a certain action at the meeting, and you're just kind of like, okay. And then the next time you see him, he's like a completely different guy. So it's just like,
yeah.
It's just like, oh, okay, he was trying to do this action for a specific reason to try to ingratiate himself in this role he's supposed to be in. But it's not really true to him as a person. That's not really
right.
He is. So,
I just want to quickly say that this story, one of the things that it does good, or it's not really that it does good. I think it just does its job. But you have sometimes when you're reading so many genres, that's why I tell people ask me why don't you keep up with all these shonen jumps? You used to keep up with all of them and all this other shit. I'm like, I don't try to linger on too many because I get my fill. Sometimes enough of one thing and I'm kind of like, let's switch gears, let's switch paces. But one of the things I like about the story is that I'm reading it and I'm like, I expect this dude to do the thing, and he's just like, and then it reminds me, why would he do that thing? Like, it doesn't make sense. And I'm programmed because that's how the series I normally read. That's what would happen. Like this dude, in a conventional story, and when I mean conventional, I mean Shonen Jump series. This type of character would stay. He would stay he's a foil character. He would stay dimensional like this, and then he would meet meet up with, one of these characters, and then he would meet his demise. He would have died.
Right, yeah, or it would take him 3/4 of the story to
Yeah,
have a change in heart or something or different role if he was going to take one.
yeah, and it would be
They
dramatic,
do-
like
yeah, they
really
do
dramatic.
that.
And this guy's like, no, like I'm actually looking at the panels right now where it's like, he's talking to the prime minister, and he's like, Mo tribe leader was a great man. He is a man of utmost integrity of all the people I've ever met. Even if he's from an inferior race, he should be respected. He feels that the prime minister is the one who orchestrated his old man Mo's death. So, and the prime minister is also a phenomenal character, but and then he mentions back to him. He says, you either die with the integrity you view importantly, or you live without it. And that is like that line is my favorite line
Definitely one of the 3
because
or 4 strongest dialogues in
I
the
like
series.
when you have two characters with opposing views having this back and forth dialogue. And Joker and Batman are one of my favorite movies. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is the interrogation scene for a reason. And this isn't on that level, but I'm just simply saying that sometimes this series does more than just action. There's other elements in a story that you can make heighten the suspense, make you feel part of the moment, elicit feelings. And that was one of them. And to see them at odds, and to see this person like have this kind of full journey, full kind of arc, transpiring in front of us, it's nice to see, and it's refreshing that he didn't get roped into that. This is who he always was. We just didn't know who he was until he started talking about what the fuck he valued in people, and I think that's kind of like it's a cool note, to touch upon. But yeah, that's to wrap up because we're running past. I like the series. Cons, I don't think the story is as strong as it could be. Especially for chapters 97 chapters. I've read things that have had, in this genre that have had, more of an engaging experience, but it's still fun. You're not gonna hate this story. The only thing you really is kind of like I said in the beginning of the stream, getting into stride, actually reading the series. After the first chapter, things seem a little bit slow. You don't feel that too engaged, but after certain moments, you're gonna read through it and you're gonna have fun. You're gonna be like, you know what? I like the action. I like the art. The story picks up pretty decently, and there's nothing really too detrimental that you're gonna take away from your overall experience. And yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on it.
The flaws on it aren't in abundance. It's not a very flawed experience in terms of just like, there's a plot thing wrong here, there's something wrong there. It's more just about like the story could be stronger. It could have done more, and in the terms, I guess you could say that's a flaw in itself. But at the same time, it's not really a detrimental thing either. It's just like we're still seeing it at this current time. We're just kind of rating based off what we've read and what we've seen. And I think it's fair to say what we've said on it for about that. And also, it's just like the Chinese lore and language can be hard if you're not somebody who's used to it and takes that in really easily. It could be hard to keep up with. So you might end up looking at panels a couple more times than you're used to. Some series you can just look at it once and you're just like, okay, I already know.
Yeah.
And this is just like you're gonna be looking at it like, I don't know how to pronounce that. I don't know how to say that. And depending on how much that bothers you.
Right. Yeah. A character we didn't talk about is Zhu Sheng Wang, who is the masked individual. I'm gonna do a separate like a quick 5-minute video.
That makes sense. It's a much bigger, broader thing.
Yeah, because he is pretty much the base, like the overarching plot of like this of the story, and he's he's actually indirectly driving the story forward, which is usually protagonist or antagonist, but he's actually the one doing it. So he has a very, very, very interesting story, and actually I think I'm going to pull up one panel really quickly that I have saved. And let's see if I have it around here. Yeah. So basically, yeah, he has my favorite. Usually in these types of videos, we always talk about, or when we do these things, it's always like favorite moments, yada yada yada. But for him, see if I can pull it up here. Where are you? Do I have it saved? I hope I do. Maybe I don't. I guess I don't. Never mind. I guess I don't. But the point being is, if you're on my Twitter or whatever, it's the moment where he's looking up at the tree and he sees all of these fucking deadheads. Yeah, that is my favorite panel by far. But fortunately, I couldn't show it to you guys. But yeah, so or maybe I put it in the thumbnail. Who knows? But he's separate. I know some people who maybe have read this series or whatever, or who are reading it now, kind of like, why didn't you talk about him? But it's for a reason. He's there's way too much to his character to talk about just in this quick little moment. But
yeah, we'd be running like 3 hours.
Yeah, that's pretty much everything we said about that. My rating is a 7. Vince is a 7.5. We'll keep you posted. And the next one of these videos we haven't really decided yet, but stay on the lookout and for the future for one of these discussions. Oh, and the next. Why don't you tell them the next series that we're reading?
Oh, all right. So we're reading Tomodachi Game next, and I've read it before, but I want to reintroduce myself to it and get a fresh start, because like when you're reading as many things as me and Shinsui tend to read, you can't keep up with everything. You remember important parts and you remember stuff, but you don't remember everybody's name, or you don't remember small details. And also, I think it's a good different type of series to discuss. It's going to be a different type of discussion.
Yeah, and it's just came out actually today. I'm pretty sure, but it's around 73 chapters. And if you guys know, read that series or you've heard of that series, it's a little bit more known than this one. But yeah, we're looking forward to the discussion. So appreciate everybody who came through. We'll close out the video now. So yeah, see you guys.